And as we wait a few more moments for people to get settled, it's nice just to check our attitude about being here, whether you're at home on Zoom or here in the room together with the community, the local community. And to shift our attitude from, meditation, training my heart, working with my mind, from that being something I should do. It'd be better if I do it, kind of begrudgingly engaging the practice, as opposed to, well, we get to do it. This is what I want to do. I really want to take care of myself. I want to take care of this mind and heart in the most practical, functional way that I can, in a way that actually helps me and then those around me. Because as we become more settled, more wise and compassionate, well, that's what the world needs. And with that comes the resolve that, however our sit is going to be for us, each of us today, and then tomorrow and every day that we practice formally, informally, our meditation, we resolve not that it be a pleasant experience, because those of us who've been doing it for a while know that some of our meditation periods are really unpleasant, just like some of our times in life are really extremely even unpleasant. But we can deeply, powerfully resolve, like with that real ardency, that real clarity, to learn from our sit today, from our sit tomorrow, from our formal and informal practice, from our life. To find our way, like what actually is supportive of more wisdom and compassion, and what's not. And the formal meditation time is just we've done what we can do to have supportive conditions for that kind of learning. And of course, it won't be perfect. For each of us in our own way, let's do that reflection, like that resolve, like I'm really here to take care of myself, to take care of this heart and mind, even if I sense that I don't have a clue. That's why I'm here. And if nothing else, we just observe cause and effect, and we'll learn, we'll become wiser. We'll be able to take care of ourselves better. And that compassionate resolve naturally leads into the intention in our meditation to cultivate a non-distractedness and to become more honest about all the ways our mind slips into distraction, into getting entangled with problem solving, getting entangled with becoming somebody, getting entangled with the future or with the past experiences we've had, even getting entangled with becoming a better meditator. There are probably an infinite number of ways our mind can get entangled, can get distracted. And we get to be interested in that. It's really a choice. Mostly it's been unconscious, but we're going to illuminate those moment-to-moment choices where the mind is, because of the force of habit, going toward distraction, and then illuminating this other possibility of non-distraction and really learning what non-distraction is. So when we're offered instructions about being present with a meditation object, like being aware of the physicality of breathing in and out, the actual physical sensations of the breath coming in and going out, we're cultivating an alternative experience to connect with, to sustain present moment awareness with, when the alternative would be the mind slipping back into some mental proliferation about this or that. And of course, there are many options for what you use for your meditation object. Being with the rhythm of breathing in and breathing out is one of our common useful meditation anchors. So I invite you to use that. But if you have another way to stabilize and strengthen the continuity of present moment awareness, of course, continue with your training. And the key here is to learn to appreciate the pleasure of non-distraction. It's a real thing, that pleasure of non-distraction. Remembering from the past couple of weeks the teachings on recognizing that particular mental muscle, you could call it, to connect and sustain present moment awareness. And the particular quality of connecting is a slightly different mental muscle than the particular effort of sustaining, not forgetting the present moment, not forgetting the meditation object. These are two fundamental skills, many more, of course, but these are two really basic fundamental skills we're strengthening. Learning how to connect with the present moment using a meditation object, like being with the body, sitting, or being with the breath, as I mentioned, or being with that attitude of compassion, self-compassion. But in either case, regardless of what meditation object, we're recognizing that this is here and now. This is being known. This is real here and now. This experience of breathing in, or this experience of the body sitting, or this experience of the attitude of kindness. It's here and now. And then sustaining it is learning how to keep it in mind, to not forget. And only with the connecting and sustaining can we open to that pleasure of seclusion, of non-distraction. It's really our guiding light in developing our formal sitting meditation practice is to learn to attune to the good, wholesome feeling of the mind becoming more simple, less pushed around by its liking and disliking, its hopes and its fears, and more settled in the present moment, gathered, unified, stable. So be on the lookout for the wholesome pleasure of non-distraction. And we'll continue in silence for a while. And we can always begin again. And often it's useful to begin again with sensing that flavor of compassion. And really here to learn how to take care of this heart, this mind, this body, to develop some wisdom because I care for myself, for the whole world. And then it's just a matter of our willingness to learn. So when there's a lot of distractedness, the mind is identified or caught up, then the learning is, oh, this is stressful. This is heavy. This being identified, attached to thought, to emotion, to feeling. This hurts. Without judging, just acknowledging the truth of our experience. And then when there's less distraction or even moments of non-distraction, a simple, clear recognition, oh, this is good. This feels right. This seems onward leading to more wisdom, more learning. This is the way. Non-distraction is the way. We feel or sense the power of samadhi, that gathering or coming together of the heart from a fragmented to a non-fragmented state. And it just feels right, like a kind of spiritual healing. So let's commit to learning what can be learned during our sit today. And then one additional instruction that you can play with lightly, just in the course of your practicing, noticing distraction, the heaviness of it, noticing the wholesome pleasure of non-distraction. So in addition to that, just to be interested in what's more and more subtle and refined in your field of experience. That will help the mind attune to what's pleasurable in a wholesome sense. Basically, the mind moves from being attached or identified with what's gross in our experience, the opening to what's more and more refined or subtle as it quiets down. So it can be helpful just to remember to be interested in what's subtle and not to feel obliged to pay much attention to what's gross and obvious. We don't have to go looking for what's subtle. More about relaxing and letting the moment reveal itself. Sense of spacious peace and calm might be subtly here already, but not yet clearly noticed. Is the mind distracted or free from distraction? So for the last minute or so, just sensing the contentedness that might be available in the moment, the heart being content with the conditions that are here, coming and going, that sense, that pleasant, wholesome sense that things don't need to be different than they are right now. And that's not the same as saying that conditions are perfect. Just that sense, that peaceful sense of equanimity or balance with the conditions as they actually are now. Yes, this is how it is. Can this be okay? So we'll take some time so you can stretch your body a little bit. Do what you can to be comfortable in your body. A big welcome for all of you here in the room and the 65 or so folks online today. This is our Common Ground meditation community, not just people locally, but we have people from around the country joining in on Zoom and on live stream. So big welcome to the whole community, people interested in these wise teachings from our teacher, the Buddha. And just to let folks know, I've been giving a series of talks on samadhi, the stable, concentrated, unified heart, and it's part of our practice, right? There's three main parts of our practice. We're using awareness or wisdom and awareness to transform our way of relating to each other. So we call that sila, or just the integrity of moral, ethical conduct, that commitment to not harming. That's one area of training. We bring awareness and wisdom to our relationships, even how we relate to a toothbrush, how we relate to our dear ones and our communities. And then there's the training of samadhi, where we're bringing wisdom and awareness to taking care of our mind and our heart. And in Buddhism, that's chitta, it's just one thing, it's the heart-mind. Just like we want to take care of all of our relationships, so they're wise and kind and not destructive, not causing harm, we want to take care of the mind. And then related to the mind, but on the most subtle level of the mind, we want to take care of our understanding. That's the third part of our path. It's described, in the tradition as the Eightfold Path, but it's easier to remember as three sections of the Eightfold Path. The training in sila, moral conduct, non-harming, the training in taking care of our heart, and just developing a stable presence, clear, kind, stable presence all day long. Right? We train in that, and we train in transforming our understanding from, what pretty clearly, if we start paying attention in life, we pretty clearly see that our self-centered frames that we use most of the time aren't that helpful. And whenever we relax that self-centeredness a little bit, do you notice how problems seem to be easier to solve and resolve in our lives? Right? When we have a bigger, deeper, wider picture of things. So we're bringing wisdom and awareness to this most subtle part of who we are or what we are, right? These frames that we use, and generally, like I said, they're mostly self-centered frames. But we're not limited to self-centered frames. That's just our habits, our habit. So samadhi is you could say 1/3 of the path, but they're obviously related. There's no deepening and transformation of our way of relating to the wider world without some stability. Or without that stability, how are we going to even sense the different frames my mind is using as it lives its day? It's a subtle, understanding is a subtle level of the mind. We need that stability of awareness. So in a way, and the Buddha, talks about this, they interact with each other a lot. Like the more we pay attention to not harming, living in a more harmonious way, then we just start to feel more stable in life, as opposed to wondering if we're going to get caught doing the wrong thing, right? That's not a very stable way to be living a life. So I'm finishing a series of talks on samadhi today, but if there are questions, I might, when I come back, I'm going to be going to IMS, Insight Meditation Society, to teach next week, leaving tomorrow. Shelley's coming back, Shelley Graff, our other guiding teacher, I think today, and I'll be gone for about 8 days or so. So next Sunday, Stacy McClendon will teach, and on Tuesday night, Patrice Kelsch will be teaching the Tuesday night group that's just online. But when I come back, I think it's the August 18th, I'll answer questions, and you can just send them to the center. If you have questions about samadhi, about concentration practice, about stabilizing present moment awareness. And if not, I'll go back to the teachings from Ajahn Chah that we started earlier this summer. And one of his chapters was on samadhi, so I've been maybe doing 5 weeks now on samadhi. And the piece that I wanted to do today, to emphasize today, is what's called in the tradition guarding the senses. And it has kind of a tight vibe, but you have to remember, one, the teachings were recorded mostly by men, and the Buddha himself was from that warrior caste at the time in India. So a lot of the similes and just the attitude, the quality, the tone of the teachings can have that. But regardless, we're always going to be responsible for hearing something that seems worthy of listening to and then making it real for ourselves. And that's not always easy, but that's just how it is, because we're all, the whole point of spiritual development is to move from any sense of dependence to independence. So that doesn't mean we don't use teachers and teachings or institutions like Common Ground. We want to understand it as a starting point so that we can become more independent. That the wisdom is kind of intuitive, or it's its own natural process. It's actually quite a powerful insight. It's a weird experience when, and maybe I'm guessing many of you know this experience, when you see some authentic, clear wisdom arising in some interaction or some experience in your life, and there's a sense of being so grateful for that clarity, that perspective, that wise perspective, and at the same time it doesn't seem very personal. It's like, I didn't do that. But that clarity, that perspective was there. And that's what we're developing in our practice. And I want to start by just sharing this, for me, heartbreaking, heart-moving simile the Buddha used. So I'll just read as it is in the texts. Oh, sunglasses. I have heard that on one occasion, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now on that occasion, the Buddha was sitting out in the open in the pitch black of the night, while oil lamps were burning. Many flying insects were meeting their downfall and misfortune in those lamps. Seeing this, the Buddha exclaimed, rushing headlong, missing what is worthwhile, bringing on one new bond after another, like insects falling into the flame, some are intent on what is seen and heard. Right? So he's talking about us. Right? Just like how easy it is for our mind to kind of go to our liking and disliking. And kind of lose that wise sense, oh, it's like this, or the present moment. We're really vulnerable to that. And unfortunately, I think, just in terms of our economy and the whole information age we're in the middle of, a lot of the smartest people in our society and maybe in the world are going into the business of how to figure out how to get a hold of our attention and keep our attention on like media, basically. But we're already susceptible to that. You watch any animal and they're kind of have that sort of distracted vigilance about what's going on, what am I hearing, what am I sensing, what am I feeling. And we're never going to lose that sensitivity, a kind of animal-based sensitivity, and it comes out of a sense of wanting to survive. And for us humans, wanting to survive also includes wanting to belong, because we're a social beast, right? So we need to belong, we need to fit in, we need to know what we're part of and what we're not part of. All these things that are both good and cause problems in our wider world. So the question is how to understand that. And one of the things, like if we're just on that level, we're going to be always pushed around by our likes and dislikes. And we're going to, like the Buddha describes, fall into the flames. We're going to get burnt over and over again. Searching for something interesting, searching for some interesting food, some interesting conversation, searching for some interesting posture where my body doesn't hurt. It's just like there's a kind of hunger. There's an image in Buddhism called the hungry ghost. And it's to depict, it's some people's mind depicts an actual realm of existence, but as a metaphor, it really depicts this place we get into where we are that hungry beast, but the kind of hunger we have can't get satisfied. So we try this, helps a little bit, but we're still hungry. We try that, still hungry. Eventually, fortunately in a way, we get exhausted by our searching to ease that hunger, and we sleep for a while, But then it kind of begins again, doesn't it? What can I imagine that will get me out of bed? Coffee or donut or, checking the news, checking my texts, emails, whatever. Something that, whether the prod is desire or fear, like what terrible emails have come my way since I went to bed. Something, notice when you wake up, something kind of motivates you, like, or I'll be ashamed if my partner gets up before me, or, whatever it is. Look at that, how we use the prod of greed and fear and aversion to motivate our life so much of the time. Not always, but much of the time. Here's another verse from the Buddha on this. Clinging to sense pleasures, to sensual ties, see no blame in the fetter. Never will those tied up in the fetter cross over the flood so great and wide. Right? So when we are identified with that person, that idea of me, who needs something, and therefore I'm vulnerable to whatever triggers, whatever stimuli, whether it's internal, like a thought, a memory, or external, something, I hear something, I see something. we're kind of caught in that realm, that restless realm. And what the reason we have these sort of similes or these teachings is to break our heart open. Like we want to feel deeply in a very personal and then global sense. It isn't easy being a human being. It's a setup. It is a setup being a beast. And remember, there are aspects of our being, of our conditioning, even genetic conditioning, that's all about survival, but it isn't about being peaceful, the conditioning, or about being happy in a deeper sense. It's just about surviving. And so this is part of that transition from being that kind of nature-based animal that wants to survive at any cost to this capacity, it seems that we humans have, to see the vast perspective. Right? So yeah, maybe we could justify lots of harm in order to eke out another year of life or something like that. But with the bigger perspective, right? And this is like so many examples of this through human history, of people having that bigger perspective, wider, deeper perspective. And so it's not like that survival instinct goes away, but there's a new frame that isn't centered on a sense of this body surviving, or this body being seen as good, or this body even belonging, feeling accepted, or whatever. Right? We can learn that, the gain and loss, praise and blame, that just kind of comes with the territory. And sometimes it may seem just, and sometimes it seems really not just, the blame we get, or the criticism that we might get. But the vast perspective understands, sometimes it's like this. I think about this a lot in terms of my, for the last 15, 20 years, I've tried to be a better student about understanding race and my racial conditioning, and understanding what it means to be a white, straight man, well-educated white, straight man, and privileged in all those ways. It's really important for me to just see that, whatever that yucky feeling is, to kind of own that perspective. It's like, that's how it is. And I don't have to be afraid of that. That's the key, is to understand that it comes with some implications. It's not about being fair. I didn't ask to be born with these sort of cultural conditions. I don't need to be embarrassed about that. And it's true for each of us with our own sort of conditioning and lived experience. How to really inhabit it and not be afraid of it, not think about it in terms of good or bad. It's just about how to be skillful, how to develop, bring our wisdom and awareness to non-harming, to having a stable, clear presence, to having the deepest, widest, most vast understanding. That's really what we're doing. And it's a way that we take care of ourselves and take care of others. I think it's really important for us to understand that developing samadhi is the way we take care of others. If we somehow think that I got a choice, I can either take care of my own life, in a deep spiritual sense, or take care of the world, be an activist in some way, as being two paths, I'm not so sure that's true. And I think it might be somewhat of a failure of imagination, how can those two things coexist? Really caring about the health and well-being of our world, of all the beings in the world, and how can I take care of this personal heart that I so clearly feel and sense, and the fear here, or the anxiety here, or the fragmentation, the distractedness here. But maybe we can hold both of those. So the teaching on guarding the senses, although it can feel a little tight because of how things were languaged at the time of the Buddha, we want to translate it. So here's one of the classic texts where the Buddha was asked to kind of explain the rewards of practicing in the way he was suggesting that we practice. And he used his own life as an example, and he says that, that I dwell experiencing the reward and fruits of clear knowing and release. And then the questioner, in the discussion, it's like, well, where did that come from? How did you get to that clear knowing and release, the full, unshakable release of the heart? And talks about the development of the 7 factors of awakening. So these are just the beautiful functional qualities of the heart. Energizing, like to be interested in the underlying nature of things, that spiritual investigation, the energy that comes from it, the joy, the upliftment that comes from that, and the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity, all held with awareness. So those are the short version of the 7 factors of awakening. And then the question is, what allows for the development of the 7 factors of awakening? Being aware of the activity of the mind and body, right? These are the 4 foundations for those of you who've done some study of the Buddhist teachings. And what supports having that stable presence with the activities of the body and the mind? Having that sila that I mentioned earlier, that real resolve to learn about where we're causing harm, how we cannot cause harm. Not that we ever get to that place as a human being where we're not causing any harm, but we aspire to not causing harm, to pay attention to that, to train in that kind of integrity, just to care about my thoughts, my words, my actions, and what that sets in motion. And what allows for this deep commitment to sila, to this non-harming. And this is where the Buddha talks about guarding the senses. He says, and how does sense restraint, when developed and pursued, lead to the culmination of wise conduct, the sila or non-harming? There is a case where a practitioner, in seeing a pleasant form with the eye, does not hanker after it, does not delight in it, does not give rise to passion for it. Unmoved in body, unmoved in mind, one is inwardly well composed, well released. On seeing an unpleasant form with the eye, one is not upset, one's mind is not unsettled, one's feelings are not wounded, one's mind does not become resentful. Unmoved in body, unmoved in mind, one is inwardly well composed, well released. And it's the same. So you start with seeing, then hearing, then smelling, then tasting, then touches, and then mental activity. How to be a sensitive human being, but not disturbed by that, not thrown around by that. It's like an example would be, I remember one of the teachers at Common Ground, periodically at least, I don't know where he found it, but there was just, looked like a delicious piece of chocolate in a nice wrapping that just was sort of left somewhere, and he thought, well, I'll eat that. And it seemed appropriate. I would assume this guy, from what I know, has integrity, so it's probably just whatever, available to be eaten, but it had cannabis in it. But it's an example that's used in just like you see that, or maybe you see dog poop. But how to have a visual experience where the mind isn't and you're going to have whatever conditioned response to seeing the chocolate or what looks like chocolate or seeing the dog poop, right? Or have a conditioned response. Like if you've been oppressed by people in your neighborhood who don't pick up after their dogs, you might have a big storehouse of anger about that. So that little seeing of poop might trigger this rage, right? Because it's the last straw. But whatever it is, the mind can get trained to not go beyond the visual experience. That's just seeing. And if and when all the conditioned response arises in the heart, that's just that conditioned response. Okay, rage, or I like for the chocolate, or I wonder if I'll like. But the mind can remain, whatever arises in conjunction with that initial sense contact, like seeing the poop or seeing the chocolate, the mind could just stay right there with that as a sense experience. But what happens is the mind starts to get seduced by the different arisings, right? And then we're not aware that they're arising. So we're not aware, we forget that it's just a sense experience being known. Mental activity, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. Those 6 things are how we know the world. We have to keep it at that level. Sometimes we call that bare attention. Here it's being called guarding the senses. So we're not guarding the senses by like thinking, oh, I shouldn't see, or avert my eyes, or or walk around the city with headphones and it will just be white noise, Because, that gets tighter and tighter the more we think that, like I do sometimes, I'm sure I'm not alone, like, if only I didn't live in such a noisy neighborhood, or if only, my partner were this way, quieter in this way, or the way I want them to be in that way. Or if only my job didn't make me so busy. We have all these ways that, happiness would come if only I weren't a human being. Living a life like human beings have to live, right? And so we don't realize it, but we end up being afraid or hating existence because we've imagined happiness as not having existence. Like, if only I weren't here. And that's why, a lot of us in different ways, we have this tendency to seek oblivion, whether it's through sleep or numbing ourselves out through watching programs or drugs, alcohol. I mean, there's any number of ways that we try to lose our existence, get so into something, get obsessed about something. I think some of these conspiracy theorists, people who get into this, the drama of, is this really true? That it's like the mind gets fixated because it's so amazing that this might be true, that we seemingly get some distance from our pain, from our anxiety, from the uncertainty in our lives. Sayadaw U Pandita and others in our tradition, they talk about this in terms of people who have been parents. And, it's like when our kids are young, or I haven't had children, but when your children are young, or you're in charge or responsible for young children, you're really vigilant and kind of controlling about what they experience and what they don't experience. But we aspire, like if that's our responsibility, we aspire, hopefully, that at some point they're on their own. And I don't have to be hounding them about what they're eating, or when they go to bed, when they get up, or what they're going to wear. Or, think about how weird that would be for a parent of somebody who's 30. Or maybe I have to make it later now. It used to be 18. But it's a nice metaphor that's used in the Buddhist tradition about just understanding that, like that capacity, that there's a wisdom that the child develops to know, like I don't put bobby pins in electrical outlets, and I don't, stay up this late, or because and it's the same thing with like taking care of ourselves. Like the mind, the heart, this is really what samadhi, this training in taking care of our heart is all about. It's like we want to understand that the stability of present moment awareness is really our greatest friend, our greatest protector. And so we want to take care of it. So when there is an inclination to get absorbed in this stimuli over here, it's a real question of wisdom and compassion. Do I want to do that? Is that helpful? What would the consequences be of letting the mind absorb into this for some time? And to really be aware of all of the rationalizations, because the force of habit comes with this very intelligent rationalization, like why that's a good thing to do. I'm sure you've noticed that. I really should go to bed. Oh, but this is, the mind knows how to be compelling. Oh, you deserve this. You've worked hard. Right? That's a common one, for me at least. And this wisdom, compassion of guarding our senses, it's wider and deeper. It really understands rationalizations as just that. And it doesn't personalize. It's not like you or I are fighting with a devil inside of us. That sort of rationalization to do something, let's say, that's not that helpful, it's just a habit that got set in motion. And the mind likes to repeat itself, even if it's not productive. It's really, whatever your addictions are, it's really good to study them in that non-judging way, to really understand the dynamic of addictive behaviors and to depersonalize them. And whatever addictive pattern has gotten wound up in terms of our heart and mind can be unwound with wisdom and awareness. It just needs to be seen for what it is. Because what the addictive pattern requires is non-awareness, ignorance. It doesn't hold up. Addictive patterns, unhealthy addictive patterns don't hold up well with awareness. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. We all have our own versions, myself included, of these addictive patterns. But I'm really grateful for the ones that have been illuminated with wisdom and awareness, and the mind is less and less caught in them. And even the ones I still might be caught in from time to time, I have a lot of confidence it's just a matter of time. Where the wisdom and awareness, however unstable it is, because if it were stable, I wouldn't have that addictive pattern, right? It's getting stronger. It's interesting. Is this really helpful? Is this promise that the rationalization is promising really going to deliver or not? And it's it really comes from this heartfelt, I don't know how to control this thing called my life, but I really want to be there with awareness. Like, I don't know what to say to my teenage daughter, or I don't know what to do about this pattern in my life, but I really want to be present because whatever I don't know, I do know that being present in this stable way leads to learning. I start to see what I haven't seen before in terms of the pattern, what it sets in motion, what's helpful, what's not helpful. That stability of present moment awareness is truly good in all ways, in all places. This is a good reflection. Where is it in our lives where we would not want to have that stable, relaxed, clear, deep and wide presence? Where would it be inappropriate or unhelpful? It might feel awkward to be present in places in our life where we're being unskillful initially. And because it's unpleasant, when we're really aware of some force of habit making us do whatever, it's really, it hurts. But it hurts appropriately because that's the natural feedback. Like, oh, when I do this, it hurts. That's what we're missing. That's why we keep doing, thinking certain ways or acting certain ways or speaking certain ways, is because we haven't really felt directly the squeeze that happens when the mind is thinking that way, speaking that way, acting that way. We have to actually be there. Wisdom and awareness has to be there before change can happen. And it's really this act of love. This is a wonderful translation. This verse is translated in different ways, but I like this particular translation, who has turned to renunciation, turned to non-attachment of the mind, is filled with an all-embracing love, freed from thirsting after life. And interestingly, not thirsting after life is what sets up a really beautiful all-in engagement with life. We think, it's my passions that keep me engaged, and that's true, but it hurts and it causes harm for others. But there's another way to engage life, which is to be non-attached. And then our engagement is really liberated from the stickiness of attachment. That our engagement with our friends and loved ones and issues we care about really is nimble and creative, and there's no reason to not be engaged when we're not attached. And this is for each of us to experience for ourselves. This is another passage from the Buddha. In this way, friend, it can be understood how the eye is not the fetter of forms, what the eye sees, nor these visual forms the fetter of the eye, but rather the desire and lust that arise there in dependence on both is the fetter there. Right? So what the heavy weight is, it isn't that we see, and you can think of this in any of the sense gates, so what we think, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch. It's not the sensitivity, the fact that there is sensitivity, and it's not the fact of what we're sensitive to, the particular sense object. Rather, the Buddha is saying, it's what arises in conjunction with those two things. So we will always be sensitive to sense experience. That's just our karma. Having been born as a human being, to some degree, depending on how our body works, we're going to be sensitive to sense experience. And the question as a practitioner, what we're interested in is, what is it that's arising in conjunction with those sense contacts? Being sensitive to this sight, or being sensitive to this thought or emotion, or being sensitive to this sound or touch. Well, liking and disliking, to put it in easy terms, right? That's what arises in conjunction with sense contact. But something else can arise in conjunction with sense contact. And let's just call it wisdom. The wisdom that, it's just that sight being seen. Just that pleasant sight being seen, or just that unpleasant sight being seen, or just that disturbing thought arising and being known, or just that pleasant thought arising and being known. And when the mind knows that it's getting seduced, but it's really disturbing, that thought I'm thinking, And the mind wants to, just like we go back to a nightmare when we wake up, it's somehow where there's like a magnetic pull back to the content of the nightmare. That it's the same thing when we get hooked. The mind gets hooked by some painful memory or some difficult interaction or some hopeful vision of who I can become or what I can set in motion in my life. The mind gets hooked in some way, and then sometimes that's where the parental energy has to come in and say, honey, you could obsess about this or think about this, you could speculate, you could get entangled, but it would be stressful, it would hurt. Why don't we pay attention to this? And we bring the mind back to the meditation object, like the breath. Or if you're out in the world, you just come back to the experience of the body standing or sitting or whatever the posture of the body might be in that moment. You come back, you find a way back to the present moment where that impulse to get obsessed, to go down that pathway, is just that. But it's in the context of all these other aspects of the present moment, arising and passing, that kind of breath. Because each of us now in the room, we have all kinds of unwholesome tendencies that might get triggered by any number of things, right? including internal triggers. Yeah, that memory pops up because it was waiting to pop up. It had some momentum already. So we have to be willing to, like, sometimes there's enough wisdom to understand, oh yeah, that's just that memory. And that's enough to liberate the mind from getting entangled with it. But sometimes the habit of getting attached and seduced by the content of that memory is too much. So then it takes a stronger hand. The practitioner has to, in a sense, motivated by compassion, has to say, no, this isn't going to be helpful. And redirect the attention. Here, you can be aware of this. So you can go back to your breath. You can go back to hearing sounds. You can go back to this understanding that it isn't easy being a human being, and I care about this life. It's probably not easy for the rest of you to be human beings, so I care about your lives too, right? So you can just keep that loving attitude in mind. Anything to kind of, where you can remain stably in the present moment, but not get sucked in to some unproductive engagement with thought, with emotion, with, it becomes its own vortex that feeds itself. And we can, as you all know, I'm sure, I certainly do, we can be caught in those vortexes for a long time. And if we have awareness when we come out of one of those vortexes, we'll feel the damage. It's like the mind is not good for anything, right? Except maybe some sleep. And we feel a little bit beaten up when we've been in it. And the worst thing about it is we've reinforced the tendency to get sucked in. It becomes easier. Each time we get sucked into some unproductive mental proliferation, it's easier to do it again and again and again. It just becomes the nature of the mind to fall into that. So I'll leave it here, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, on the 18th when I come back, I'll entertain some questions about samadhi, so you could just send them in to me. My email is mark@commongroundmeditation.org, but the basic email to the center is info@commongroundmeditation.org, and they'll just forward them to me. And we'll take those questions up then on the 18th. And a couple other announcements before we end. Stacy McClendon's doing an intro workshop on Saturday, I think it's the 31st of August. And Gabe Keller-Flores and Shelley Graff are going to be leading a 6-week intro class starting, I think, on the 24th of September. Believe it or not, there's still spaces in the Labor Day retreat, which is the Saturday before Labor Day weekend, the 24th, to Monday, the 2nd, either on Zoom, and there's even 1 or 2 spaces out at the retreat center. And I'll be out there. Shelley will be also teaching along with me, and I think Gabe is going to help out too for some of the small groups. And then Britta, did you have some announcements?
Yeah, just a couple of announcements. So the first one is all of the programs here at Common Ground are offered on a dharma basis, meaning free of charge. And you can be a gift to this community in several ways. If you choose to give financially, that is certainly welcome. We have dharma